This is the Ezra podcast, and we're talking UFC 279. We gotta talk about everything, the way it played out. Very interesting night, especially with all the mayhem that happened the night before and the whole card shakeup. But I thought we got a more interesting card, and I think everybody kind of felt that way. I think some people thought that this card was getting kind of overrated now. Right, we got overrated because of everything that happened, and they still thought it was a bad card, or they thought that it's kind of nonsense for the fighters, and it is like guys like Kevin Holland, right, or Li Jin Lang, or Daniel Rodriguez. I don't think that they got the fair end of this one. I think it worked against them in this fight. Now Chimaev got to stay on the card after not making weight or coming close to it. I think Tony Ferguson got the better matchup that he wanted. I think he got a main event. I guarantee all these fighters got paid more. And Nate Diaz definitely got a better matchup for him. Nate Diaz definitely got the matchup that was way more favorable to his style, way more favorable for him to win. And the chances of him getting destroyed in that fight just weren't that likely. It was always going to be somewhat of a competitive fight, even in a fight if he lost. But I didn't think he had a chance of losing this fight. And I know that the odds were actually in favor of Tony Ferguson, which was very odd to me. Because I mean, you got to remember, Tony Ferguson is just coming off being flatlined at this point. So how could he be favored over Nate Diaz? It's just that part, it didn't make sense to me. I get that it being closer odds than, of course, the Chimaev fight, because the two of their styles kind of work well together, or at least we thought they were going to work well together. It kind of ended up being a little more of a, clumsy fight, a little more frustrating fight, a little more awkward fight. But let's get to the breakdown of Nate Diaz versus Tony Ferguson. Now, Nate Diaz, we have to talk about it. Been fighting in the UFC since 2007 at a really high level. That's pretty insane to still be fighting at a high level in 2022, especially in MMA, where the sport has evolved at a rapid rate since like the early 2000s to now, right? To the point to where fighters are fighting in 2007, like Rich Franklin, Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz. Those guys, this is say like Jens Pulver, those names, right? Would it be absolutely primitive if they fought today? It just wouldn't work. They would not be high level fighters. And maybe that's sounds harsh to say, but I really believe that's the case. That the sport has evolved so far beyond that, right? Just with like the techniques, the way it's more put together, just the mistakes that were made in the past are just not really commonly repeated today. Nate Diaz's style has been from 2007 to 2022 and still been effective at a high level. It's kind of unheard of, right? And if we look at his record, and it's not impressive. And he's like really a win some lose some type fighter. But you have to think about it in the sport of MMA and how many styles there are and the evolution of it, and how there's always a new top guy. Like every year, there's always feels like there's a new top guy that could be possibly the best ever. This guy has rolled through all those times, right, with his style that has been effective through all this times. Like, it's like everything he's saying, you kind of get where he's coming from now when you really think about it that way. When he really says, like, I'm the best fighter, right? It's because of effectiveness. It's because his style has lasted the test of time. Think about that. Think about all the fighters that fought in this time. And Nate Diaz's style is the one that has aged the best. It's pretty crazy to think about. So when he's saying these things and him being a legend and all those, and we try to downplay because he doesn't have, the greatest record or anything like that. It has that argument can stand on something because of that. Because since 2007, he's been effective in this sport. It's just that doesn't happen often, or just not. Guys aren't usually that effective and stay long, especially MMA. Like MMA, if you go look at a UFC card in 2007, just look at those guys fight, and then look at the guys fight today, and just tell me that you pick some guys out there. You're like, yeah, they could compete today. It's just not. You're not gonna see a lot of them. You're not gonna see a lot of them. So we get to the fight with Tony Ferguson, and Tony Ferguson is, to me, when it went into this fight, I thought like, oh, this is gonna be a good. I think a lot of punches are gonna be landed in this fight. I think that their styles are gonna mesh well. And it was entertaining, but I wouldn't say that their styles mesh well. I thought it was kind of an awkward fight. And that could have been because Tony Ferguson balance was really bad in the fight. And that has to do with him no longer being in his prime and being far from it, in my opinion. And just not being able to keep his balance after one or two shots. That's the truth. And that's why he was doing the spinning. And people were saying, don't turn your back. Don't turn your back. It's because he couldn't help it. He just did not have the feet to to stand straight. I mean, that's just the honest truth. Now, Tony Ferguson's always been known to do some strange and interesting techniques, but watch him against Gaethje and then watch him in this fight, and tell me that that's the same balance that this guy has. It's just not. It's not the same balance. Now, Nate, I think, feels really comfortable in this fight. And I shared there's some moments, right? There's some moments like his definitely the leg kicks from Tony Ferguson were really affecting Nate, and that's always been Nate's problem is with the leg kicks. He could always been destroyed with leg kicks, and Tony Ferguson was really going to turn off his leg, and that's when if you notice when he starts really landing him, you start seeing Nate play around more, right? Start joking around more, start walking away, putting himself against the fence, like a lot of stuff. It was all mind games, right? To get Tony Ferguson to stop focusing on the leg, to get Tony Ferguson to start opening up with his hands, and start getting a little more exchanges. Now, I did think that Ferguson kind of got away from leg kicks for some reason. I thought he should have just kept doing it and doing it until Nate couldn't stand on that leg anymore. But he at that point he would take long gaps from it. Now Nate kind of fought his fight, right? He was comfortable as far as the stand up, as far as the punches, wasn't a lot of things landing or anything like that. He wasn't cut up in this fight. Usually he's cut up. And he's kind of just working his own pace. And eventually, like I thought, it was just waves and waves of things that would just eventually break Ferguson. Now, I wasn't sure. I wouldn't say that he broke Ferguson. I would say more that he forced Ferguson. He got to a point where Ferguson was forced kind of to make moves that he probably shouldn't have made. And I think the takedown was definitely one of them. And I think that happened just because I think his corner was seeing that Nate was finding his spots a little bit more. His shots were starting to add up more. And they wanted to do something to change the momentum of the fight. Now, I scored every round for Nate. I do agree that the third round could be a swing round, but I had every round for Nate. So going into the fourth, I thought Nate was up 3-0 comfortably. Then he goes and wraps up the guillotine, and it's all over. Submission for Nate Diaz over Tony Ferguson. And we have to talk about Tony Ferguson's just kind of like ground game, just really diminishing. And it's not really a thing you talk about, right? When guys lose their prime, it's usually either out of their prime. It's usually their hand speed, their power, their timing, all those things. Tony Ferguson's like ground game is just really diminished. Now, my friend Andy, who watches a lot of MMA, he's very smart when it comes to MMA. He did bring up that, like against guys like Dariush and guys like the champ Oliveira, they have a more their jiu-jitsu like more compact. You get in position, I'm going to hold that position, right? Then that's what more their game is. And with like a guy like Nate Diaz, he says it's more fluid. So, he's looking to roll with you, get on his back, look to catch something. And he said that that's kind of how Ferguson is. So he thought it might be interesting on the ground. I did kind of think it might be a little more interesting on the ground too. And right away, Ferguson just goes for takedown and just gets guillotined. And that's kind of really, if you think about it, like that's a really, really like low level jiu-jitsu mistake to really get caught in. It is, and especially like at a fight that I don't think he was like drained of energy or like to fall into that. He just fell right into it. Like it's just a common thing, and it's just like a diminishment. And what Tony Ferguson was like, I understand he doesn't have the durability anymore, but just to have no ground game or no defense for it, and guys just being able to have their way with him. Because if you remember, Chandler too got on top of him. He was kind of having his way in the end of the first round. That's definitely interesting. It's really, I think, one of the first cases I've seen where it's like the ground game just really disappeared as his prime went away. So Nate Diaz gets the win that he wanted on his exit, and he gets the last laugh on the UFC. He says that some interesting things in the comments that he's going to go to another thing and show these fighters how to do it. So everybody assumes that's boxing. Everybody assumes that's Jake Paul. That's the big money fight. If that doesn't happen, that'd be very interesting to see why that wouldn't happen. I think that would be a mistake by Nate Diaz. If he's looking to make big paydays, Jake Paul would be it. Now there was talk of him and Conor maybe doing their trilogy in another promotion or in their own promotion. I just don't understand those talks because I believe that Conor McGregor still signed with the UFC. I've never heard that Conor McGregor was a free agent. I never heard Conor McGregor was on the end of his fight, so I don't know how that would happen. I'm curious to see what Nate does. He started his own fight promotion. The only move to me right now that I can see clearly makes sense to Jake Paul. Now, if Jake Paul gets beat by Anderson Silva, we'll have to see if they're still interested with it going forward. Maybe Nate Diaz can figure out a fight with Anderson Silva in a boxing match. Who knows? But I just I hear him starting the promotion. To me, that's kind of worrisome because I see a lot of guys try to start this and start their own thing. And when you start saying that you're going to do jiu-jitsu, kickboxing, and boxing, and MMA, and all these things, it's like a lot of the sports aren't going to be successful on TV, or are going to be ticket sellers. So boxing will be. It's going to be dependent on really Nate Diaz fighting. I don't think Nate Diaz is going to put together a boxing card that's going to draw a lot of interest unless he's fighting on it. And if he's going to do MMA, that's interesting as well. If he could find the right opponents, the right names, I think people will want to watch. Now we go to the Khamzat Chimaev versus Kevin Holland. Now this is a fight with beef into it, and like I said, there was a time in 2020 where these were the two guys that people thought, oh, they're gonna face each other one day. This is gonna be an interesting matchup. And it feels like we're a long ways from that, right? It feels like we're very, very long ways from that fight, from that moment in 2020 when Kevin Holland was considered maybe as good as a prospect as Chimaev was. And going to this fight, I kind of told you that Kevin Holland, he doesn't have a poker face. He really doesn't. And when he jokes around, he reveals a lot when he talks, and he lets you know that he didn't feel confidence in this fight. And I felt the first 5 seconds was going to be the most important moment of this fight. Could he do anything to offer Chimaev, to offer some resistance, right? To make Chimaev second guess himself, anything to push Chimaev back. Chimaev runs right in on him. First 5 seconds, gets him straight to the ground. Now, it's not like Kevin Holland folded at that point. He did. He did use his ground game. He did. There was he did use some rolls to try to get a better position. And once Chimaev got a hold of him, right, and once Chimaev got the darts choke in, I mean, it was brutal. It was no matter what he did, he kept moving in different position. It kept getting tighter and tighter. Remind me of, you see the two alligators. They're fighting each other, and the one grabs his arm and he spins and he rips his arm off. That's what it felt like. It felt like every time he spun, it was just getting tighter and tighter and tighter. And Holland, who's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, had no answers for it. It's like he had never been in a grip that strong before. It just seemed like once he was in it, you kind of you thought maybe could he figure out a way, but you could just tell that slowly he was settling into defeat. It wasn't a mental thing. It was just couldn't get out of it. Couldn't blame him. And Chimaev is just relentless. No, it was just looking to apply the ultimate pace on Holland, and he catches him in the darts, and he holds it on tight, and it gets tighter and tighter, no matter the position, and Kevin Holland submits. And the thing with Chimaev is, I was interested to see if Kevin Holland could survive it, right? Because just the amount of work that Chimaev was putting into getting that finish. If Kevin Holland could have survived that, and what would Chimaev's conditioning have been after that point, right? Especially, let's say, if he had a hard time making weight. And we know that Chimaev has kind of shown that as the fight goes on, which I always thought was the Nate thing would be interesting, is if Nate could survive the first 3 rounds of it just beating and see where Chimaev's gas tank is at. What would it have been after the Kevin Holland fight, right? And I think that some people are questioning his cage IQ, right, with the pace that he was putting on in that fight. The thing I say with Chimaev, and when you have a talent like Chimaev, and when he has that kind of ability, that kind of strength, that kind of power, those kind of techniques, you're not training him the same. When you have Mike Tyson, when Mike Tyson walks in, right, and they see him, when you have that much power and ability, raw ability and power, you just want to apply that to someone, right? You want to force that game on someone. So he gets to his opponent. You're not telling Mike Tyson, hey, figure him out a few rounds. No. You're telling Tyson, he's never seen anything like you. We're just going to unleash you. That's what they're doing with Chimaev. Chimaev is just being unleashed on guys now. Now, the Gilbert Burns fight, you've seen it. It was a tough back and forth fight, a fight that he got hurt in, a fight that he was really challenged. It was definitely going to be, to me, a fight of the year. Definitely a competitive fight. Definitely at points where he felt like, oh, maybe this is going to slip away from him. But because of his ability and because of everything he can do, he's not a guy that's going to be like, oh, I'm going to choose to play safe at this point. No. He's just applying his game. That's what Chimaev's going to do. He's just going to apply his game because it's in his mind and to everyone else's mind, and to even you see his opponent's mind, it is something different. And when it's something different like that, sometimes you don't need the tricks. Sometimes you don't need the craft. Sometimes that's what it is. When Chimaev loses, it will probably be a guy that could drag him late. It will probably look like a Vander Tyson. It will look like a guy that could survive the avalanche. It survived the bully. But it's probably going to be a crazy run until we get there. It's not nothing to do with the cage IQ or anything like that. This guy, that's not him. That's not what he's bringing to this. He's bringing destruction. He's applying what he's good at to you at full force. He's coming at you 100%. If you can stop it, then you could probably beat him. But not even Burns, right? Not even Burns. If you remember the third round in that fight, not even Burns got through it. And that's just the truth. He did what he was supposed to do with the level. When he's showed with Gilbert Burns already, he proved that he's at the highest level, right? With being a guy like Gilbert Burns. When he fought Kevin Holland, he didn't go down to the competition. No. He was still fighting at that level, and that's why he got Kevin Holland out of there so quickly. Well, it's going to be interesting what they do with Chimaev because, are they going to move him to middleweight, which is supposedly the rumor now. They're moving to middleweight's next fight at the end of the year. Which, he's fought a middleweight before, but it's also interesting with the storyline of him cutting weight because at first it was saying, we weren't sure. Well, it looked like he did it on purpose. Did he do this on purpose? Did he just choose not to make weight? People were saying he ate the night before. Then he says, the doctor stopped me. And the doctor told me I couldn't cut weight. And it's nonsense because I would have been able to make it. Right now, I thought that was kind of weird. I was like, well, I don't ever remember hearing a story where a doctor stopped a fighter from cutting weight. And we've seen some pretty scary stories in the UFC. We've seen people pass out on scales. We've seen some really depleted fighters. So I thought that was a very interesting comment. Now today it's saying the trainer saying, no, it wasn't anyone. There's no physician. It was me that stopped him from cutting weight. So that story can't seem to get right for some reason. That's interesting. But moving him to middleweight off of one time he didn't make weight, I think is also very interesting as well. We'll have to see. Middleweight, it's definitely be very interesting in that it's a big jump up from 170 to 185. Even though he's had success there, it's not at the highest level. Guys like Whitaker or Victoria, very strong. I think it'd be very, those are very interesting and tough fights for him. But I think that if he could fight at 170, he still wants to fight at 170. He should still have that option. I don't think missing weight one time should eliminate him having that option. As far as Kevin Holland goes, I still want to see Kevin Holland. I think that his ground game is always going to be a problem. I don't think he's ever really going to be able to stop takedowns. I don't think he's mentally the strongest guy in the world. But I think he's a very interesting guy in the middle of the pack. And I think his hands, when he could stay standing, he's always going to be entertaining. He's always going to be in a fight. It's just going to be like good wrestlers and guys that control on top are always going to be his nightmare. Li Jingliang versus Daniel Rodriguez in a fight that I thought Daniel Rodriguez was clearly going to win. I thought he was going to get the stoppage in this fight. He was 10 pounds heavier than him. And it looked, as soon as you saw him in the cage, they did not look the same weight class. His stand-up was a little bit crisper. As far as what I thought going into the fight, I thought his 1-2 and with his straight left hand was going to be really effective, especially because Lee kind of relies on looping shots and fighting in flurries, wild flurries at that, and trusting his feet to get in and out. But in this fight, Rodriguez just didn't trust the left hand. I heard on Twitter, there was a rumor that maybe he broke his left hand in training. It kind of looked like that. I believe it. He didn't say that, but he never said that. It's not official or anything like that. But it kind of looked like that because he just did not throw it. He didn't throw it ever. And this is a guy that relies on his 1-2s. He relies on them. That's his game, and he just doesn't release them. He doesn't release it at all in this fight. And Lee is very comfortable, and his technique's a lot better. And he finds his rhythm, and to me, he just controls the fight. I just never thought that Dan Rodriguez could win this fight. He didn't take any chances to win it. He had landed his jab once in a while, but sometimes the jab is a very interesting punch. If you're going to win with the jab, you have to completely control the fight with your jab. That's my opinion. You just have to completely control the fight. It has to build on. It has to build into something else. It cannot just be, oh, I landed my jab, and he was landing shots too, and my jab's gonna beat his left hook. That's not gonna happen, right? It's just not gonna happen. That's not the way I'm gonna score it. The jab it was landing for Rodriguez, but it didn't outweigh the left and right hooks that Jing Lang was landing, right? Didn't outweigh that. Didn't outweigh his leg kicks. It just didn't. It was either you set something else up with it, or you control the fight completely where Lee can't get anything going. That wasn't the case. It was a very competitive fight. I thought Lee won the fight. I thought he was screwed over so many times this weekend, as far as training away from his family, getting dressed up for the weigh-in, preparing himself to speak English at the weigh-in. That gets canceled. Has a fight with Tony Ferguson, which is a decent name and a favorable matchup for him because Ferguson's moved up to 170. Ferguson's is just coming off being slept. That gets taken away from him. He has to fight, of all the replacements, he has to fight the guy that's 10 pounds heavier than him. That's the whole reason the main event wasn't happening. And he gets booed during the fight because I don't know, surprisingly enough to me, who UFC fans kind of seem to pay attention to every storyline, boo this guy who is making all these things for your entertainment, make all these exceptions for your entertainment. And then he gets robbed in the scorecards. I mean, it was the ultimate screwing for Li Jingliang. And that's disappointing. And he fought and acted like a professional, and he did what he was supposed to do. And he didn't say, no, I'm not going to fight this guy because he's 10 pounds heavier than me, which he should have said, honestly, for being honest. But he didn't do that. He went, he fought, and he won the fight, and he should have won the fight. And they didn't give it to him. And I'm sure the UFC was still going to give him a lot of opportunities. I'm sure the UFC is not going to hold this one against him too much because they understand what it took to make this fight happen. But it was still very disappointing. And I thought it was a momentum killer a little bit for him. It would have been a very big win for him. And it would have been on a good card where people were paying attention. It's too bad it didn't happen, but I hope he gained fans, and I really do think he did. And the fans booing, that's because most fans are fools and they're probably drunk and just want to see chaos and mayhem, and that's why they all turn their back when there's a fight in the stands. But Lee didn't deserve that. That was one guy in the car that didn't deserve that. That was Lee. That was disappointing. On the fourth fight, we have Irene Aldana versus Macy Chiasson. And in the fight, which was a damn good fight, you have Aldana, who starts off strong in the first round. She really dominates that round. And her hands look good. She looks sharp. She's in and out of range. And then Macy comes out, and her stand-up looks way sharper in the second round. And then she lands a takedown, and she's very effective with it. It doesn't look like Aldana has an answer. She can't seem to get up. And then he gets to the third round, and Aldana gets a little more energy, but still doesn't look like she has it all the way back. And then Macy lands a takedown again. And you're just kind of thinking at that point, I think there's like 2 minutes, 30 seconds left. Like, okay, Aldana's she's going to lose this fight. Macy's going to stay on top. She's going to control her and win this fight. And Irene's not going to have, if she didn't have the energy to get up in the second round, she's not going to have the energy in the third round. Somehow gets some spacing. Macy stands up and she lands a heel kick to her liver. And when you first see it, you don't know what the hell happened. It kind of looks like Macy got kicked in the arm and her arm broke. Like you're like, I don't know what happened. She just fell straight to the floor. But the heel kick to the liver, you see in the replay and you see Macy say, oh, it's a liver shot. It's one of those things where a bunch of light bulbs entered a lot of fighters' heads, right? And they were like, okay, this is a new technique, right? Where a guy, I'm on my back, the person's standing over me, but my legs are right there. And everybody goes to try to kick him in the head. But the heel to the body or a kick to the body, when you have all your leg strength right there, and it's not even shooting up, it's kind of just shooting straight at a point, is going to be a very interesting. You're going to see a lot of people attempting this now. It was a amazing stop. It should have been knockout of the night. I don't know how they did their bonuses, but that should have been knockout of the night. And Irene Aldana gets a big win in a fight that really she had to scrape at the bottom of the barrel to pull that off. Like she had to pull everything out, and she literally did. She literally pulled everything out to get the win. And I'm going to be honest, I would say both Macy and Irene to beat Amanda Nunes right now. It might sound crazy. I know, I understand. You got to think that Amanda Nunes is not the same fighter that she once was. She's definitely on the downside of her career. Now, I know that she just got her win back, but even in that fight, she was getting touched up. And her opponent wasn't a great striker, right? Isn't the best of her hands, kind of actually wild and robotic with her hands. Aldana is very loose with her hands. She's very comfortable with her hands. I think that Nunez will have a world of problem with her movement, her hands letting go. Macy is very long, very creative. I think that Nunez will have problems with her as well. I would love to see Aldana versus Nunez next. And then let's get back to this rematch with Irene and Macy, win or lose for Aldana. I think the stock rose for both fighters, and Aldana with that highlight reel stoppage, to me, put herself in a spot for a title shot against Amanda Nunez. I'm predicting that's Amanda Nunez's next opponent. I thought it was a entertaining card. I thought, especially Aldana Chayasin, I thought that fight stole the night. I thought, like I said, Nate Diaz, he's kind of on the point where he can't have a bad fight. He's like one of the part-time wrestlers who's like really good and just can't do it every night. But when he does wrestle with someone, he like makes an entertaining match. Nate Diaz is kind of that for MMA right now. He just kind of knows how to make an entertaining match, and all the trash talk and the stunts that Ferguson and him pulled, and then the offense that they did land when they did land, it just made an entertaining night. I don't know. Khamzat proved that he's going to be tough to beat for anyone. It's just going to be interesting what they do with his weight class next. And Li Jinglang, to me, should have gained a lot of fans. It should have gained a lot of respect. He gained my respect. I think he's a true professional, someone that you could tell takes the sport very seriously, very serious about his career. And Daniel Rodriguez, who to me wasn't his best performance, looked flat to me, didn't take the chances to win, but got the win. I still think he's very interesting as well. When he's letting go with 1-2, he's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous. Thank you guys for listening. This has been the S podcast.